Hello friends, welcome to Squaird Plans, where creative planning and organization comes to life. I'm Stephanie, and today we're going to be creating a DIY sticky dashboard with a laminated pocket and folder flap. It'll be a fun way to hold sticky notes and extra stickers, or whatever else I need in my new half-letter setup, so let's get to it. I'll be using these matte thermal laminating pouches, along with some cardstock from this paper pack. I also will use this corner rounder punch, this We Are Memory Keepers disc power punch, this Tombow glue runner, this metal ruler and a Sharpie, this laminator, and also this guillotine cutter for my street cuts. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled out a piece of cardstock from that paper pack, and I'm going to cut it down to size. I am building a half-letter planner for 2026, so this will be at that size. I'm going to be doing 5.5 inches wide here, and I'm going to make it double-sided even though it's a single-sided sheet of cardstock by placing two pieces together. And I'll just use my glue runner there to make sure everything's nice and lined up. It will be cut down to 8.5 as far as the height is concerned. But I like to trim it when the paper is glued together just so there's no backer showing from the front to the back. They're not cut exactly perfect. And this way I get a very clean cut and two sides without any overlap on one or the other side. Here I have one sheet of my matte laminating pouches. And I'm going to be putting this in here as the backer for my sticky dash. And since I am doing half letter, I can really save on materials here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this down right away to size, just giving enough room here on the edge so that I can make sure that the lamination is able to adhere. So I have one sheet here, and then I have another sheet. This other piece that I have, I'm going to use for the large pocket I'm going to be making as part of this dashboard. So I'm cutting it to the correct width, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of extra at the top. So when I actually trim it to size, we'll just trim off at that point, and that way I don't have to be too specific when I am doing the height here. So you want a little bit of overlap on the height, but the width needs to be cut to size at this point. So what I ended up doing is turning the lamination piece I'm going to be using for the pocket inside out. So the sticky sides of the laminated page is on the outside instead of on the inside where it would normally be. That is going to create a pocket, so the silky, like smooth sides that are usually on the outside are now facing in, and that will be our pocket inside. And I was struggling a little bit just to make sure that this was perfectly aligned because I didn't want to have any weirdness overlapping. I did cut it 1/2 inch short on the one side where I will be punching it so that the punches didn't get into the pocket area. Most punches for ring planners, for Discbound planners, will come in up to about 1/2 inch into your page. I usually just use that as a good guideline, keeping 1/2 inch open for any kind of binding situation I'll be using this for. So I'm just going to line everything up to that other edge, which I ended up using the edge where it was already pre-secured on the pouch, and that made it really easy just to push everything up into that edge before laminating. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and laminate this guy. Some thoughts about this project. I may do this again without the cardstock backer, and then use that pocket as a way to change out the background. You know, I thought about this after I had made it, and I had planned to make one that was just made with laminating pouches, no cardstock. In the past, it just haven't done it yet, and then I forgot about it when I was going to make this. So I'm probably going to make another one, and you may see that in my planner setup without any cardstock backer. So just know you can do that too. But for this one, decided to do it with a cardstock backer. And I was having a little bit of trouble getting it to laminate closely to the edge, specifically on that spine area, because of the width of the cardstock plus the pocket. So when I ran it in sideways, I was able to get a better adhesion because it was a little bit thinner there at the spine section, and then kind of bulked back up about a ½ inch in at the pocket. Okay, so the next step is just going to be to trim it down. And I'm just going to clean up the edges a little bit. It was already pre-trimmed, but I can get a little closer now that I know how close the lamination is. And then at the top, you're actually going to cut right to the edge of that cardstock, maybe even a smidge in, so you're cutting everything flush at the top. That allows you to use the pocket pretty easily, sliding things in, and then you don't have to worry about things not aligning perfectly because you have that excess at the top that you were able to cut off. Now I'm going to go ahead and round the corners. I'm going to use my smallest corner rounder, which I've used quite a bit in the past and is pretty dull at this point. So I do have to clean it up with my scissors pretty much after every punch, but it gives me a good guideline to follow. And now that we have the pocket and it's already set, we are going to make a flap. Now I was going to make this flap purely out of laminating sheets, but at the last minute when I saw how opaque the matte laminating sheets are and how opaque that pocket was, I decided that I wanted to have a little bit more splash of that cardstock. So decided to make the flap with cardstock, which I haven't done in the past. I have done something very similar to this for my classic size happy planner, and I will link that video up above here in the cards, as well as down below in case you want to see that process with the classic size in particular. But this one is slightly different because I am going to be using cardstock here on the flap. So I just used a bowl from my kitchen to make that circle, and then I just kind of straightened off the edges once the bowl started to turn back down, and made a flap back here, which I'm going to put on the same side as that pocket. The front will be reserved for the sticky dash. So right now I am trying to mentally figure out how I'm going to do this, and that's why you might see me take a little bit more time than I would normally. First off, you want to cut the laminating sheet down for the pocket. Now, when you decide on your flap size, I should say, you want to leave a little bit of extra on the edges. So you can cut it pretty close, but I would say leave at least 1/4 inch extra on the edges if you can. The reason for this is, you'll see here in a second, when you cut this down, what's going to happen is you're going to leave about 1/4 inch on those two sides where the bottom corner is going to meet the corner of your sticky dash open. So here you're going to see me cut the top flap, and I'm going to actually cut it pretty close to the cardstock and actually go a little bit over just to even out the roundness of the flap. So now we're going to take that other square from the laminating pocket and put it on the front actually, and see how it's got a pretty hefty edge on both the left side and the bottom. We have cut down the backer to be flush in the corner, but you want to leave extra on the edges. I know this is complicated, where it's going to touch the sticky dash and hold down the flap. So the glue side is going to directly adhere to the back of the sticky dash, if that makes sense. So I left about 1/4 of an inch at least there, maybe even a little bit more on the 2 edges where I want it to adhere, and then the flap that you want it to be free form, you're going to just cut to size so that both the top and the bottom are matching as far as the border on that. So hopefully the visuals will explain a little bit better than I am with my verbal explanation here. But as you can see, I have those 2 corners, again, the left and the bottom corner, exposed on the top. So that top flap has about 1/4 of an inch extra on those sides. And then the one on the bottom is going to be trimmed to size. And then we're going to cut them together with a little bit of extra, I would say maybe 1/8 of an inch on the flap where it is rounded. And here I'm cutting it with scissors. I'm just kind of free handing it. It's not perfect, but I got pretty close. And here I'm just going to straighten out this edge because I think I cut it a smidge crooked when I cut it on my guillotine cutter since it was fairly thin. All right, so we got all the excess out of the way. Let's go ahead and lay this down so you can really see what I'm going to do here. So that 1/4 of an inch brings in the cardstock just a little bit, and I lost a smidge of footage, sorry about that. But basically I just aligned the corner, like I mentioned, with the excess on the top, and then ran it through my laminator. There is a little bit of extra here on the flap, but the other side has adhered to the cardstock and to the round sides of the laminating sheet. So there you have it. And like I said, I think this turned out pretty good. I'm going to do a little bit more trimming here on the edges just to make it nice and clean. You can, again, do the same process without the cardstock at all. Just eliminate the cardstock and cut it in a very similar way with the laminating pouches, and then you'll have yourself a clear version of this. Like I said, I'm probably going to build one for myself, but the process will be almost exactly the same, except for no cardstock. I also went ahead and built myself a half-letter hole punching template. I didn't really need to do this with the Classic because it always has a center hole, but with 8 discs, there's never a center hole. And so it was getting kind of difficult to figure out how to punch this. So all I did is I went ahead and made myself a template so I could get that starting hole. And now I'm going to go ahead and start punching it with my We Are Memory Keepers disc power punch. And I say that so that you know exactly what to look for when you go to search for this product. It is really game-changing for DIY projects, especially if you're going to be building things like this with heavier materials, plastics, chipboard, anything like that for your planner. Highly recommend this tool, and I think it's anywhere from $25 to $35 depending on where you get it. But I've used mine up quite a bit, and so it's a little bit dull. Needed to do some extra trimming on the holes because it is so dull, but it still works really well. So I went ahead and snapped this guy into my classic size Happy Planner, just so you guys can see it in action because I haven't quite built out my half letter yet. And you can see the options here for the flap and for the back pocket. Now we have the front here. I'm going to go ahead and set it up with some sticky notes just so you can get the full effect of how I'll be using this. And just going to go through my sticky note stash and look for some things to coordinate with the color scheme. I have a ton of sticky notes in just various places and things. I should be able to maybe color coordinate a bit and find some ways to make this look appealing for kind of wintry theme. Go ahead and pull a few of various sizes that I have here. One thing I have noticed is that I do go through my sticky notes pretty quickly. So changing them out once a season is usually pretty good for me. I will use half to maybe like 2/3 of my sticky dash within 3 months. And that was with the classic size, by the way. So I'm sure I'll probably use these guys up even more now that I have less room to add stickies in my new half letter. So I'm just going to grab some options here. So I'm kind of sticking with like teal tones, cool, icy tones, and white, although I do have a few in there that are a little bit more colorful, like this long list sticky sheet. I really should not buy any more sticky notes. I've had these for years now, and I'm just slowly plugging away at them, but then I end up adding to my stash, and I always have too many. Obviously, I have too many. I have so many that I had to keep a whole booklet of them, plus I have a separate one for other ones. Yeah, maybe I need to cut back on my sticky note buying. Let's do a little bit of fine tuning here, and that's going to do it for us, friends. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below. Also, too, go ahead and leave me a comment if you'd like to get in touch, and think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, if you'd like to see more of my videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Bye!